So this is the public hearing. If I count correctly, this is the fourth public hearing for the comprehensive permit application, Novo Riverside Commons LLC. And it's 201 unit multifamily development at 292 and 294 Baker Avenue, which is a 10.2 acre portion of the real property known and numbered as 300 and 310 Baker Avenue. With me here tonight are board members Elizabeth Akers Moore, Ravi Faya, and Tom Swain. One board member was a little bit under the weather and she is participating remotely, and that's Elizabeth Leonard. And then also here are remotely is Judy Barrett, our 40B consultant, and Elizabeth Hughes, our town planner. Tonight's big topic will be traffic, and we hope to get that all organized tonight. And so that really is what I want to start off with. There is some other items that are still following that, but I think the big nut tonight is traffic and get through that. One thing that I want to mention now, to start off, and then I'll mention it more often, I think, tonight as well. We have another meeting scheduled for March 11th, and that is really the date that we are going to be closing the public hearing. So any and all comments really need to be in to the board either during a meeting tonight here or on the 11th. Otherwise, written comments need to go to the planning staff so that we can still take testimony, but so that door closes on March 11th. And then because we have, according to our calculations, until March 17th to really to have the public hearing closed. April 11th is our regular scheduled meeting for the Zoning Board of Appeals. That's when we want to vote on the decision. In between, and I want to talk to the board about that, in between close and voting, we might want to have another meeting just to discuss conditions, waivers, etc. And that will be, I think we can do that via Zoom. But I think I'm not sure how much we can get through tonight and on March 11th. So I might ask you for attendance at yet another meeting. There's going to be, if that is going to happen, I think March 21st would be a good date, and I just keep that in mind. Later on tonight we can come back to this. If that's the date, then that would actually mean that there's 5 weeks in a row that we have a meeting. So it's going to be busy just before you leave, Elizabeth.
No. Oh yeah, before I leave. I know, right?
We will keep you busy.
That's great. You're not helping your cause, so asking me to stay.
Yeah. So anyway, without further ado, I think the applicant on Kevin, unless you have anything to add right up front, but we'll just jump into traffic, and then afterwards we'll do with all the other stuff but traffic is being the big nut here. And just so that people also know, applicant Randy Hart from VHP is the applicant's traffic consultant, the town's peer review consultant, Heather Montecup is here as well, and they will, I would assume, in a little bit of discussion tonight about what it entails to make this traffic plan work. So Randy, all yours.
Good evening, everyone. Randy Hart with BHB. We prepared the traffic impact study for the project, and we did it for typical industry standards. Some of the things that we look at as part of it is we look at existing and future conditions. The future conditions we look at two ways. We look at it without the project in place and with the project in place. And by doing so, you're able to see what impact the project has, if it has any at all. We also look at traffic volumes. We look at traffic operations at key intersections. We look at safety. And we look at what's necessary from a site access perspective. As you know, and here tonight, GPI is the town peer consultant, and we've been working back and forth with them to address comments, questions, and concerns. Next slide, please. So I just want to remind everybody about the location of the project, because I think it's super important. We are located within Concord Meadows Corporate Office Park. We have good access from Route 2 and Main Street. And there's a planning trend that we see across the state and even beyond, whereby you're putting residential projects in, corporate office environments and or even retail environments, because there's a real synergy between them, a benefit. Some of the benefits include the proximity to employment. There's employment opportunities right there. There's proximate to retail in West Concord Center. Some of the residents who live there will work there, either in the corporate office park or one of the adjacent businesses. They can certainly walk to the West Concord restaurants, businesses, etc. And we're right next to the commuter rail. So, the option to walk or commuter rail to employment and or appointments generally lessens traffic conditions that would otherwise be generated if the site were somewhere in a rural area. Then you have to use your car. Here you have choices. There's another key benefit to this location, and that is that it results in a counter flow pattern. And what I mean by that is, at a corporate office environment, everybody comes in the morning and they leave in the afternoon. Well, at residential facilities, it's the opposite. They leave in the morning, they come back in the afternoon. So while we are generating traffic, the traffic's being put on the movements that are lower during the morning and the afternoon peak hour period. So it's another factor for consideration. Next slide, please. Just an aerial just to show the proximity of the site to both the commuter rail and to the West Concord businesses. You can go next slide. So as you know, the town hired GPI to review all aspects of the work. On November 6th, we received the first comment letter from GPI. We then took the comments and responded to all of them in detail. We also provided an updated TIA based on some of the questions and comments that were raised. We wanted to provide as much detail as we could and update everything so that you had the latest and greatest based on the good comments that we saw from GPI. And then on February 9th, it was issued, but we saw the response letter to our response on Monday of this week. I think it's fair to say that the comments are generally boiled down to two areas. Not so much the traffic and what it's going to generate, what the impacts are, but more some tweaks to the site plan that are being asked for, as well as some ideas for mitigation. And I'll touch on that in just a moment. Next slide, please. So there are a number of comments. Like I said, some are site related. If we want to talk about those, Beals and Thomas, our site engineer, they're on remotely and can respond to those comments. If they're traffic ones, obviously I can try to respond to them as well. Next slide, please. So some of the mitigation areas that have been discussed and are in the response to comments include West Main at Baker Avenue. The peer consultant had initially asked that we consider implementing safety improvements at that location. We realized soon after that the town of Concord recognizes there was an issue there, and they actually have hired somebody and they're in the process of formalizing a design to redo the entire intersection. We met with DPW online and they shared with us an online copy of the plan. They didn't give us a hard copy, but within the plan that they presented, they show a complete upgrade to the traffic signal with new equipment, preemption, crosswalks and sidewalks. There's bike accommodation in street eastbound. They're proposing to modify the old bridge Crest Street intersection at Main, where it comes in at an angle today. They want to turn it to a 90-degree, which would be right across from the TD Bank driveway. So they'll create an unsignalized four-way intersection with a more standard configuration under that scenario. And DPW told us that they plan to implement these improvements this year. So they're going to happen soon, really soon. The peer consultant in the latest response suggested that the proponents should participate with that project. And You know, we looked at the results of our analysis, and the change that we see with the project in place is a couple seconds here and there in certain movements. It's really super minor. And because of that, and the fact that that project's happening really soon, it doesn't feel like it makes sense for us to participate with that, because we're not even going to come out of the ground until after that project's done. So we'd rather spend our money in other places, and I'll talk more about that. Next slide. So another comment was the peer consultant asked that we inspect the rail crossing at Baker Ave to look for opportunities to improve safety. VHB has a transit and rail group. We sent a team out there, fully inspected the crossing to meet, what does it mean current standards, where does it shy, what could be done. They identified, and we provided to the town a detailed memorandum that shows both short and long-term improvements that could be considered at this location. So as part of this project, we will implement the short-term improvements, which consist of clearing vegetation within the right-of-way to improve the sight lines. We want to make sure the driveway has good visibility to the crossing. We certainly plan to repaint pavement markings on the roadway approaches through the crossing to freshen up visibility. Upon reconfiguration of the site driveway, we're moving our driveway a little bit to the north. We would extend the median by about 20 feet, just so it, is the full length of that section. We plan to install railroad crossing warning signage in advance of the crossing. And of course, if we're doing these improvements, we will prepare a plan that demonstrates exactly what will be done in the field by a contractor. So that's part of the program as well. Next slide, please. At Route 2 at Baker Avenue Extension, the peer consultant had originally asked us to consider safety enhancements at the location. Again, we're showing in the TIA that the change between the no build and the build is really super minor at this location. But having said that, there is an RSA, a roadway safety audit that had been conducted by Mass DOT. Within that document, they identified both short and long-term improvements as well. And we committed to, in our response, to doing some of the short-term improvements, which would be adjusting and optimizing the traffic signal timing and phasing, and considering providing split phase for Baker Ave extension and the jut handle. The split phases, if approved by DOT, would provide dedicated phases for each approach, resulting in less turning movement conflicts. Now, GPI pointed out, and they're right, and I double checked that the Elm Street project is also proposing improvements at this location as well. So our commitment is we'll do this if that doesn't happen, if they don't do anything more than that. So something will happen at this location, either by the other project or us, whichever makes sense, but we're committed to it if necessary. So that's a fairly quick overview. There's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into this, not only with the original filing of the TIA, the back and forth with the town's peer consultant, the updated of the TIA. There's been 2 rounds of it at least. A lot of work on parking and a lot of work and adjustments to the site plan as well. So it's been a long process, but I think it's been a good one. And I think aside from working out a few tweaks to the site plan and, to finalizing the mitigation program, I feel like we're in pretty good shape on the traffic perspective. So if there are any questions tonight, I'll try to do my best to try and answer them. And thank you for your time.
Terrific, thank you. And there are some questions, but go ahead. No, go ahead. But yeah, why don't you go, and then we'll go with the questions after.
Perfect. So for the record, I'm Heather Monica with Greenman Peterson, and we are the traffic engineers and also the civil engineers for the peer review of this project. And Randy gave a very good presentation. I don't disagree with most of the things that he said. Just like was mentioned, we got a response to comments to our initial peer review letter on January 2nd, 2024 of this year that addressed most of the comments that we had in our initial peer review letter from back in November. Just some of the outstanding issues that we have with that, and to note, they did do, just as mentioned, a full updated traffic impact assessment, which was very helpful. It's better to have a whole full document that you can review rather than just letters and then having 2 things. So it was a very complete package. So that was good. And in our latest peer review letter, which was dated February 9th of 2024, we talk about some items in the site circulation, access and egress, and then we also talk about some comments in the traffic impact assessment. And for site circulation, I don't think there's much, anything that can't be overcome. We're just adding, we're requesting a few more stop signs, some crosswalks, some sidewalks to be extended, so we can work that out with them. We continue to recommend that potentially some parking spaces as you enter the site be removed. There's 10 of them right as you enter, I guess the southern entrance. Some spots there that are right at the entrance. And we do note that maybe there's some possibility of some sharing parking spaces with the uses that are there, because as mentioned, they complement each other. As people are not there during the night, the residents are there. So maybe there's a way to remove those spaces and get them somewhere else. And we just had some questions about the truck turn plans, just making sure that large trucks can get to a loading area and to the dumpster. They were provided to get access into the site, into and out, which shows that the median can be extended 20 feet as we've noted in our letter, and they've agreed to, from a railroad crossing. But it doesn't show how the trash truck will make it to the dumpster and things like that. So again, simple things that can be addressed. As far as the traffic impact assessment, again, we've noted some additional pavement markings that could be added at some intersections, particularly the Concord Meadows driveway to the north. We did talk about the Main Street at Baker Ave and Cottage Street intersection, and in our peer review letter, we noted that there are a handful of items that we would typically comment on for a project of this size with the impacts that they show at this location, because again, more traffic is expected on that's where the majority of their traffic based on their trip distribution is expected to go. So we prepared a handful of improvements that could be done at that intersection, knowing that the town is going through a much larger project. So instead of implementing these small things, our suggestion is to put a cost to those improvements, minor improvements, and use it as a fair share contribution, or possibly figuring out how much the town project is, whether that's a cost estimate through the consultant that's doing the work or through VHB, and doing a % increase of traffic through the intersection, and then doing a fair share contribution that way. So it is still our recommendation that some sort of fair share contribution be done at that intersection as part of this project. The last thing is, I'm sorry, not the last thing. We can absolutely help the town in any conditions of approval like we've done on other projects. So we can work on that between now and the final meeting. And just as was stated previously, we did review the impacts at the Concord Turnpike Route 2 and Baker Ave Extension intersection. And the project really does have minimal impacts at that location. So as long as those improvements are being addressed by the 768 Elm Street project, we don't think this needs to be on them, but it's good to hear that if that project doesn't move forward for some reason, they are able to commit to that. It would require a Mass DOT access permit to do some of that work, but that's not insurmountable. And then the last thing that we just asked in our letter was if they could just clean up their sight lines, more just to document the clear zones that need to be shown. So, right now, we're awaiting their next comment letter from VHB, and that's it. We can assist the town with any conditions of approval that might be needed for the project on the traffic side.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Members of the board, any questions or comments on this? Tom, go ahead.
Just to the VHB folks, are there any items in the town's consultant report that you say, no, we don't agree, won't do that? It just make it easier for the board if you could articulate areas in which you say, no way.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we're, I don't want to say in disagreement of, we're just not willing to make a commitment to is the Main and Cottage and Baker Ave, fair share fund. Again, When you look at the impacts, yes, there is a little bit more traffic going that direction than out to Route 2, no doubt about it. But if you still compare, the movement by movement throughout the intersection, there's not a single movement that increases by more than 4 seconds, not one. So it's just, if there's impact there, but it's so super minor, and the mitigation dollars are so critical to this project that, we don't want to commit to something when we really don't show any significant impact. And another issue of it too is that, look, the project's going to construction this year, at least that's what we're told, which means it'll be 100% complete before these guys even come out of the ground. So if they were going to write a check, they're not going to write a check until the project's done. It'll be well after the improvements are in place. So it just doesn't seem to make sense for us here.
Can I ask one more?
Yeah, no, I will follow up on that, so go ahead.
I have to travel that way fairly often because I live over that way. Sure. So you're going on to Baker Avenue, you come up and you got the center aisle. So you can't turn left if you're going north. I think you can't turn left into the meadow area until you go past that and go into the driveway. So if I understood what you said, you're going to extend that aisle by approximately 20 feet. What concerns me is I had a number of occasions where the backup of cars is over the railroad track. And I've always thought, what happens when the train comes? Are there any safety improvements that either are included in your comments or yours that would address that issue? Because if you're up on those tracks or near them and the guardrails begin to come down, you have nowhere to go. So I've always been bothered by that.
I can just offer a couple things. One is that, there were certainly long-term improvements that were identified at the crossing for new gates and different things that will, be more up to date, I guess is the word I would use, as opposed to, they've been in place for some time. They were operable when our guys were there, so they were working. So it's not like it's broken, needs to get fixed immediately. When we looked at the operations, obviously the proximity to the train track was very important. But what we saw was that the queues that we see, for the left turns into the site or even coming out of the site were so small that we just don't anticipate that to be much of an issue. And the fact that we are moving the driveway, I think it's about 30 or 35 feet further to the north, it's further away from the track, so it's only getting better.
That's what I was gonna say. Moving the driveway too.
Thank you.
Rafi, Elizabeth, I have a follow-up on that mitigation, as that seems to be a bit of a hang up here. There's a couple of items that I just, Randy, with all due respect, of course, I just don't agree with, right? You mentioned the counterflow of traffic, right? And you're right, at the curb cut of the site, that's good. But 100 yards down the street, this traffic becomes traffic, whether it's going north or south, east or west, it becomes traffic. So that counterflow argument is only valid at the two curb cuts of the site. Otherwise, the moment you hit, whether you're going in or out, the moment you hit Main Street, your traffic, and you're adding to the traffic there. So that's that argument I'm not necessarily getting. As far as the increase in the seconds increase in wait times at Baker and Main go, that might well be what the traffic analysis shows. But it all, any traffic analysis, and that's obviously standard practice. You spread it out over time. You spread some traffic goes here, some traffic goes there, and in the end, there is not any measurable difference. But it sort of all adds up, right? That's why we have traffic issues out here, because everybody says, well, we don't have any issue because we send 5 vehicles there and that hour 2 vehicles there, but it just all adds up. And instead of you as the applicant are using that as an argument that therefore we don't need to do anything because we are diluting over time and over space. And it's like, it still is an impact. And this dilution just adds up from other projects. And so somewhere in there's gotta be some mitigation, some help, because, if we have some help already at the other end that Elm Street is gonna do, and they're gonna be in the ground much earlier than you are. So that mitigation is for this applicant is not there. So we are looking to have help with an issue that we have currently in town. And while the design is well underway of that project, the funding is not. It's not funded. Pieces are, and it's going to be most likely a multi-year project for a few reasons. One of them is being funding. So we are definitely looking for help somewhere to get that project off the ground and get that project running. So I kind of leave it at that, but because your Route 2 mitigation is just that's somebody else does take care of that. So so that's that. One other item on the list here that that the GPI mentions as well in the comments, and I mentioned that at the first hearing we had, that there is no auto turn analysis of the site for fire trucks. And I haven't seen it, and I know the applicant group, and there's a few of the applicants have met with the fire chief, and the fire chief has blasted, and that's well, I'd like to take you on your word for that. I would like also something in our files that says, the fire chief looked at this, he's seen what his truck needs to do, and he's fine with that. And I just, I think for us,
I can make that request.
you can make that request, but I think we need a plan that shows the movements of the fire truck. So I think that would just be good for us to have. I've been that a little bit thorough there. So those are my comments, and I might have more, but I think the mitigation is very important, and I think we need to have a letter from the fire department. Heather.
If I can for just 1 second.
Absolutely.
Heather again. So although the signal has minimal increase in delay, the Old Bridge Road approach of the unsignalized intersection, that does have delay as part of the project. And that's kind of where the comments are coming from. It goes to level of service admin over capacity during the PM, on that Old Bridge Road approach. So there is some impact at that intersection as if you're looking at it on the whole, not just at the traffic signal. Just trying to make that note.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Let me open this up for comments from the public. And actually, sorry, Elizabeth Dwyer, I kind of skipped over you. So just looking at you and seeing whether you have any comments. You're good?
I don't have comments right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody public who wants to speak? We have somebody. Thank you. Honorary Wiener.
Yes, Honora Wiener. I live at 1011 Main Street, in between Baker Avenue and Route 2, and I have a number of concerns. I think your comments about the traffic on Main Street are very real. I can tell you that at the present time, it is often a long delay for me to get out of my driveway onto Main Street. So the traffic on Main Street with people trying to avoid the rotary is already problematic and impacts our access outside of our driveway. I I also think at the railroad crossing, one of the issues for me is not just safety, but there is often a significant backup when there is a train. So the number of cars backing up, waiting to cross over the railroad track at Baker Ave is significant. And I think with the number of cars leaving and entering the development, that's a big concern because the backup can push cars way back onto Baker Ave. I also didn't see any reference to additional vehicles going into the development. If you're talking about a project of that size, up to 3 bedrooms, there are going to be children who are going to school. The addition of school buses into that area is another factor in terms of vehicles entering and exiting at different times during the day and impacting the traffic flow and the number of cars and the delays of cars and just the physical space. So I have a number of concerns because of the impact in general, but certainly the impact on Main Street.
Thank you. Randy, do you want to respond to any of that?
No need.
No. No, that's okay then. Joan Densberger. Joan Densberger?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Theo, I am having a little difficulty with my camera, so forgive me. So I will operate audio at this point. So one of the yes.
Officially state your name and address, please.
Very good, thank you. Joan Densberger. I live at 17 Concord Green, and I wanted to comment, please. Thank you for the time. The first speaker, the first presenter, made the comment that, and I quote, some, quote unquote, some of the residents who would live in the Baker Street project or development, he said the residents who live there will work there. Many will work there, and that is, he offered no evidence of this. There's no evidence of this that we're aware of. He mentioned I don't know if it's intuitive or the hope that some of them will be working in the area, not driving. That is at this point entirely speculative, unless he offers evidence otherwise. Another comment was made that traffic would not be at peak hours in terms of residents entering and leaving the Baker Street development, that he mentioned that they would traffic at that point with residents entering and leaving would not be at peak hour, period. That doesn't make sense. And how are we defining peak hour? He offered no definition of his thought of what constitutes the peak hour traffic. What are we talking about here? Because certainly in this area, it is evident that peak hour has taken on a new meaning. The traffic is extremely heavy for a longer period of time in the morning, on the weekdays, and in the evenings as well. On the Main Street, Route 62 I'm talking about, and of course Route 2 is trying to come into Main Street. It's backed up on Baker Street. So what are we talking about by reference to peak hour? And certainly that cars entering and leaving the Baker Street project would most certainly at some point be included within the traffic at peak hour, if, however we define it. So he also mentioned that the driveway is going to be placed further from the tracks, is my understanding from what he said. I'm paraphrasing. then he stated that, so it's only going to get better. Oh, where's the evidence for that? What evidence, what empirical evidence does he offer for that comment? And again, it seems like a speculative comment. Is it hopeful? So thank you so much, Theo. These are just some observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Do you want to wait till there's three more questions? I mean,
they were real questions, so.
the real question. Okay,
I'd
go
love
ahead
to-
then.
To respond.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
take the last one first. Which I forgot what it is.
It's what evidence do you have that the curb
Yeah.
cut?
Yeah, so the question that when I responded to was related to the spacing between the driveway and the crossing.
Right.
So my response is, if it's further apart than it is today, it's a better condition. There's more spacing, there's more cube
Correct.
storage. That's all I was saying.
Yeah.
In terms of the peak hours, so for a residential project like this, we look at 7 to 9 in the morning, 4 to 6 in the afternoon. That's the time when the combination of site traffic coupled with traffic already on the roadway is at its most critical level. We figure out based.
I'm going to interrupt you there for a second, if you don't mind. I think it just is important to note that that's industry standard. That is that every traffic report has those same hours in it, though, and that's industry standard because that's when the traffic is, right? So
for a residential project, yes.
So that's, so I think that's important to note that it is, because Joan asked here, I'm like, what evidence do you have, or where does that come from?
Yeah.
Just that's every traffic report has those same hours.
It does, and so we look at 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, but within those 2-hour timeframes, we figure out based on actual infield counts what that one peak hour is, and that's what's analyzed for the purposes of traffic impact assessment, what the impacts of the project are. So that's, peak hour. In terms of the comment relative to the speculation of people that will live there or work there, I make the comment because we're putting this development in a place that offers the opportunity for people to do that. It also offers the opportunity for people to walk to the commuter rail, to walk to the businesses in West Concord. Okay, if that same project were placed, out miles out of town with none of those things close by, you don't have those opportunities. And so I pointed out because it's likely it's going to happen to some degree. To what degree, we don't know. But when we analyzed the project, we didn't try to take credit for all those things. The fact that we're next to West Concord business, the fact that we're directly next to the rail. The rail, we used a certain projection in IT, but we didn't certainly assume that certain people will work in the corporate office part. We didn't take a credit for any of that. So we analyzed the project if it was in farmland and nothing around it, to be conservative. But the fact of the matter is, we are where we are, and you have all those opportunities because that's where the project is.
And before you sit down, another question. You mentioned ITE. What's that?
The Institute of Transportation Engineers is the trip generation manual is basically a data set that, counts are conducted at driveways for this type of use all across the country. People send them in, consultants like us send them into IT. They put them into their manuals and we use those to project the traffic for the project.
And that's all empirical data that gets constantly updated.
It does. And it's very specific for, certain types of residential. So this, I think it's mid-rise, multifamily. That's what was applied to this, and that's exactly what the project is. So it's strong data.
Terrific, thank you. Frank Feely, you're up next. Mr. Feely? We'll skip over you for now. Eric Moore, you're up next.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. It is not a traffic specific question. Do you want me to hold that or?
If it's not traffic specific yet, then please hold.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'll hold.
Once we're gonna have more, quite a few different traffic or items after we are through the traffic. Mr. Bergman, you're up next.
Thanks very much. Keith Bergman, 56 White Avenue, Chair of the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust. And I'm just raising a couple of issues that the trust has discussed, which would have traffic impacts. One is the town itself is petitioning the Boston MPO to add an $8 million pedestrian bridge across the Assabet River to connect to correct the MBTA commuter rail station with this general area out to Baker Ave where the Novo was located. So I'm wondering how that project. So question one is, how might that project factor into any assumptions about, how many people you might have who are leaving their cars at the site of this project and just walking across the bridge and take the commuter rail into Boston. Secondly, and we're all becoming aware that MassDOT is doing a study of the Route 2 corridor. I know a number of us had a chance to see that initial presentation last night, that there seem to be some, what they consider to be low impact improvements that can be made, say from the Concord Rotary to perhaps Walden Street, of adding third lanes of traffic, of making intersection improvements at Baker Ave and Main Street and Sudbury Road. And I'm just wondering, even if it's in an early stage, how some of those things that are happening in the world around us would, how those things might impact the traffic impacts of this project. Thanks very much.
I think there's, I'm not, thanks, Steve. But,
I think I can answer at least the bridge question. How many people will actually, park and walk across the bridge is not factored into, and Heather and Mr. Hart can correct me, but that's not a factor into this, because this project will break ground and probably be finished before the construction of the bridge even starts. So I think it would be disingenuous to try to incorporate some measure of pedestrian movement into the traffic study, since that project is behind in a construction sequencing behind this project.
So to that point, is there, to the applicant, when do you expect construction to start? Do you know?
On the residential, not the trail.
Right.
It would most likely be at some point in 2025.
Construction start. Oh, cool, Baker. Mr.
If I could, Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I just have a follow-up question. One of the issues on the Boston Region MPO is the point at which the town's 25% design plans are completed is the point at which the project can start to get programmed in the transportation improvement project. So I'm wondering what the status of those 25% design plans are for the bridge across the Assabet, and when we'll be able to see what those look like. Thanks very much.
So there's the 25% should be completed by June 30th of this year. And on the Assabet River Bridge webpage, there are the most recent Mass Trails grant application that does include the plans to date that have been submitted to Mass DOT, including the bridge type selection plans and other documents submitted to Mass DOT. So the projected schedule is 25% design completed by June 30th, and then full 100% design and permitting, and including the whole NEPA process and having everything completed by 2025. So my hope is 25% gets completed this summer, and so that we can get the project programmed into the tip. I would probably say for the the year of starting 2026. That would be my best hope, and then I can retire. No.
Well, thank you. Hopefully that answers Mr. Bergman's question. Mr. Feely, are you available?
Yes, I think Rich Feely, 347 Lexington Road. Hopefully
Thank
you
you.
can hear me. This question, and my question is, have you considered ways to force traffic, particularly in the mornings, going inbound on Route 2 to enter Route 2 at the Baker Avenue extension rather than going to the light and turning left? If you look at the biggest problem that's backing people up in front of Miss Wiener's house and everything else is the lineup on 62 on Main Street. And that even, runs the danger of backing people up over the railroad. And, the default setting is to go down to Main Street, turn left, and then go out to Route 2. But basically, why not push that traffic, particularly in the mornings, to use the Baker Avenue extension exit? Did you look at that?
We did not. I'm not sure how you would force that issue. I mean, you could recommend to your residents that they enter and exit a certain way, but enforcing it, I'm not sure how that would happen. I mean, it's public roadway.
It's a public roadway, right?
Well, yes,
Yeah.
but you and the other major landowners control almost all the land all the way to the Baker Avenue extension. I mean, could you find a way to route people through there? So maybe they didn't even have.
I'm thinking about it. We might have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure. Anita, as Ms. Hodges said, it's a public roadway and you can't tell people to go.
If people are leaving the site, is that what you're saying? Is that left turn only during certain hours or something like that?
Yeah, but there's a whole parking lot. There is multiple connections to.
Right, you wouldn't be able to
Bigger.
force all of it, but that's not, I don't think, his point. I mean, you could route some of it. I'm not saying whether it's a good idea or not. I'm just
Yeah, so the was that the exit at the
at the train track.
at the train tracks.
Yep.
No right turn between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. or 7 and whatever, in the morning peak hour. Think about it. I think that
Not everybody's going to Route 2, right? That's the
Hmm?
issue. The issue is
Yeah,
not
you're right.
everybody's
That's the other thing. Not everybody's going to Route 2, right? Because I mean,
Maybe they're going to
so that's-
Maynard.
Hmm?
Maybe they're going to Maynard.
Right.
Yeah, or dropping somebody off at the train station, or and they going the other way on Route 2. But yeah, we'll thank you for that comment. We'll take that under advisement. But
I just think there's room for a little creativity there. Thanks very much.
That's why we're thinking about it. Thank you. Any other questions? Anybody else have their hand up? Does that conclude traffic presentation? Do we have any other questions here?
Well, how do we move forward with the mitigation?
Well, we're not, that's an open item still.
Yeah, and then the other recommendations are just process wise.
Yeah, it is process wise. We've never really had a comprehensive traffic presentation. We wanted to do it last time and we didn't. And this was, it's a good thing. It's now a little bit later on in the process, but that's actually a good thing. I mean, there's 2 rounds of peer review has been done. It's really, really thought through, very well, I think, and we have some good data, and all the issues are being resolved. So I just having a presentation here to show people that, yeah, we've been, due diligence has been done on this subject. And you can go through it, all VHB's material, the traffic peer review letters, everything is on the website, so everybody can read through it. And there's a few indeed smaller items. I mean, I think, for instance, GPI asked for some additional markings and signage, that I would assume will make the way on the site plans. If there's anything that's in here that the traffic consultant does not like, I'm sure he's going to speak up. I mean, he didn't like the mitigation, but I think something needs to be done there, because obviously a project of this size has impacts. They might be diluted, but there are impacts, and I think a fair share, whatever that might be, is very much warranted. Tom,
is there a consensus over the 10 parking spaces, removing them, not moving them? Because it's contained in a number of the letters.
Well, I think the consensus was that they are recommending. They're not saying they need to go. They are recommending. So I think the applicant will have to decide whether they need them or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Do we know yet, or is that still under consideration?
I think there was a 2-part recommendation there, that they either go, or if they're built, that they're monitored after they're built. The nearest parking space to the right of way is 50 feet from the right of way. If we were to change the zoning bylaw to say you couldn't have a parking space within 50 feet of the right of way, at least the entrance drive, that would put tons of parking spaces in non-conformity.
Yeah.
So I think our proposal, we believe we need the parking. We cut the parking down from the previous proposal. We believe we need the parking that's on the plan, and we are willing to evaluate it as we go forward to see if it causes a problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Just push back a little bit because I can. You meant there's 10 parking spaces 50 feet away from the curb cut, right? This is a very heavily used curb cut. So I think it wasn't that they're too close to a curb cut. They're close to a curb cut that's very heavily used. And I think that's why they recommended that, you might want to think removing them. But I get it, it's like, evaluate how that works. And I think in the end, it'll work out.
Can I ask the question? Do you think you need them for how the project operates, or you just, in terms of asking for relief from us, you don't want to increase?
We think that we need the ratio of parking that we're now down to.
Okay.
Well, this leaves us, some smaller items to address, and I think that is almost administratively, on drawings, and then we still have a mitigation that we are, that's still out there, and that, obviously I for one, and I'm not speaking for my other board members, but I was very unsatisfied with your answer.
No, I agree. There's only 2 ways in and out of this development, and the development is taking full advantage of those. I think it is fair to ask for mitigation on that end.
So, thank you. So that wraps up the traffic. So, hey, if you have better plans on Valentine's Day Eve, otherwise, you're welcome to stay, Raji. Do you have, I know you had a memo with a lot of updates do you want to go through that right now, or?
Depending upon what the board's preference is, we have the landscape architect here. we didn't cover his materials at the last meeting, but we intended to. So I thought maybe we'd do the landscape architect, and then we don't have anything planned beyond that. We can go through that memo or any other thing that the board.
I think that's great. I think I have some, I don't want to say loose ends, it's not that minimal, but I've got some stuff and I want to bring up some stuff to the board, but I think tonight traffic was the big one, but if we get a traffic landscape presentation now, then that would be, it would be great.
New members of the board.
Good evening.
For the record, Tom Miner, Hawks Design Landscape Architects. We did the landscape architecture for this site. This is the overall site plan, and I'll give you a quick overview. As you can see, we have the two buildings, 292 and 294 on the east and west of the pond, with 300 existing 300 Baker Ave still having views of the pond between the two buildings. If you look between 292 and 294, we have a small amenity area close to 292, and we have a dog park amenity area closer to 294. In back of 294, we have another amenity area that's a more of a woodsy area with picnic and the pathways, and I'll get into that as we go along. And then way over on the right, in back of, you can see in back of the existing office building, we have a existing basketball court and an existing volleyball court that we're going to repurpose, and that the residents can share. Next slide, please. I think it's important, before I get into the landscaping details, I did 3 cross sections showing the how these buildings set into the site. We did a tree survey identifying some of the existing trees around the area that will be saved, along with the actual height, which is very important. And you can see from this slide, this is AA, this is taken at the entry, looking at the end of building 292. That AA, I can't really see. Yes, it is. And as you can see, we have the darker color trees on the left and the right are large, mature deciduous trees. They are in the vicinity of 70 feet, I believe. That one's 42 feet, and the one on the left, the taller one on the left, is 72 feet. And those are so critical to not only give the shade and the screening and scale to the buildings, but also just provide a setting for the buildings and to give separation between the existing residences and neighborhoods and between the pond and the buildings and the office building and the buildings. Next slide, please. This is section BB, and this is the end of building 292 on the office park side. And these are, by the way, these are actual elevations from the architect that have been set into the elevation. So it is a fairly accurate depiction of the scale of the buildings and the existing trees that we planning on saving. The bigger tree on the right is 76 feet high, and the one kind of on the left and back is 75, and then there's some 60 footers. So they are big trees that we're saving to give some scale to these buildings. Next slide, please. And this is right across the pond, a section right across the pond, looking at the entire length of building 294, with the red building on the right is the existing actual height. of, the existing 300, Baker Ave office building. So again, you can see the scale of the, trees that we're saving around the pond and, between the pond and the existing 294. Those are, the tall one right in the middle is 75 feet. We got a 65 footer on the left and a 60 footer on the end of, that's a big, oak tree, I believe. 32-inch caliper oak tree. So that just everyone needs to realize that, even though we are proposing additional shade trees and evergreen trees, we are maintaining a good buffer around these buildings and between the buildings for screening and scale and shade and a setting for these buildings. Next. This is a planting plan for the entrance and the kind of a typical foundation planting plan that we'll be proposing for the building. As you look at the lower left coming in, we're proposing a bus stop, and right next to the trail system that'll be winding its way through the site. It's a 10-foot trail with 3-foot reinforced lawn shoulders on each side. We have a bike rack outside the entrance into the building, a drop-off area with handicap parking, landscaped island. The vegetation that we use, predominantly native species, maple trees, oak trees, elm trees. When we get into the white spruce, when we get into the shrubs, we're looking at dogwoods, viburnums, winterberries, inkberries, red cedars, blue chip junipers, which are a native creeping evergreen. We have a wall a retaining wall on the bottom of the sheet there, right up next to the legend, and we'll be planting deciduous shrubs on the top of that wall, as well as providing a fence for safety, and we'll be looking to plant some vines on the lower side of that wall to soften it up as they grow up over time. Next slide. These are our amenity areas. You can see the upper right-hand location plan shows where they are located on around building 292. The first plan, number 1, is it's a pretty active amenity area. It's a children's playground. The red portion is a patio with seating, shade structure, gas grills, and because it's next to the paved fire access, we've actually can capture that area as part of the patio to increase the space of the active area. We provided a storage shed for any games any long games they might want to play. Below that is it's the entry again. I've covered all those structures in there, and then to the right of that is section 3 is a portion of the path system right in back of 292 overlooking the pond. We've provided some benches out underneath the tree and right outside the door. Next slide, please. This is adjacent to the parking entry to building 294. We're proposing a dog park right up against that parking structure. paved walk, next to it with the bench and, another bench out, in the lawn area overlooking the pond. Underneath that, plan number 5 is our naturalistic amenity area. It's adjacent to the future trail system proposed built by the town. There's an existing path system there now, under to the south or to the bottom of it. Coming into the off the parking lot, we're going to have a pergola or shade structure, picnic area, another picnic bench in the woods. We've also proposing raised planters for resident gardens. To the right of this is Plan 6, is the existing basketball court and volleyball court. We're proposing the basketball court stays, and we repurpose the volleyball court into a synthetic turf amenity space for lawn games, and we'll provide us a storage shed for that, and some more benches and some shade trees to separate it from the existing office building and give some shade to the area. Next slide, please. This is hard to see. I don't know if you can blow that up at all. On December 12th, which day was it? December 12th? December 11th, Brian Butler from Oxbow Associates, the wetland scientist and principal. He and I walked the perimeter of the pond that's adjacent to development. He had previously identified areas of concern with invasive species and undesirable species. We've identified 2 areas. There's a blue area to the top, right in front of building 294, that we've identified as area 1 of minimal disturbance. That's an area where we can just go in and clean up the understory and get rid of dead material and limb anything up that needs to be limbed up. And there'll be no disturbance to the actual ground plane or the root systems. In back of building 292, it's a green circled area, and that's an area we're calling where there will be substantial soil disturbance. There's a lot of invasive bittersweet growing all over the place there, so that'll require a company going in there and rooting that out, and I've shown some proposed plantings to take the place of any of that existing plant material that's in there now. And that's all native material. It's plethora, dogwoods, winterberry, high bush blueberry, red maples, river birch, and pin oaks. So that'll be, even though we'll be taking material out, we'll also be putting material back in to just keep the separation and allow views in, and it'll be a much nicer perimeter of the pond. Next slide is this is the photometric. It's nothing that you're going to be able to see, but it's basically shows that we have no light pollution off site. So the lighting we're proposing is it's similar to the existing lights that are along the drive coming in now. They're more contemporary. It's more of a box light, but it's a thin box light, LED fixture on top of 18-foot poles. They're dark sky lights. They'll be shielded where necessary so that there's, as we needed to, so there's no off-site trespass. In addition to that, throughout the amenity areas, we're also proposing some light bollards. And if you can go to the next slide, these are the left are the box light LED fixtures, and on the right are the proposed light bollards that we're proposing. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay,
Ready for
those
questions.
bollards, since they're up there, are they dark sky compliant?
They should be, because they are, the lights are coming just out from the sides. There's no top lights, so I will confirm that though.
So, so to be dark sky compliant, the light source would have to be up in that top
Yes,
fencing?
yes.
So that you could not,
Right,
directly see a bulb or
Exactly,
illumination.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
the
I
actual
believe
light
that's-
source is
I
up
believe that's
and
where they are.
perhaps just a
Yeah.
glow.
Yeah, okay, it was just up on the screen, so let's figure that out. Thank you. Don't go away,
Yep, I'm not.
because.
I'm just saying.
Okay, that's good. Members of the board, any questions? No? Elizabeth? Elizabeth Dwyer?
You have to say Elizabeth.
It is a land.
I don't have any questions. It was very thorough.
Yeah, you don't have some questions, I think.
Yeah, it's the dog park. She's not sure. She says bigger, a lot bigger.
Where's the fire hydrant?
That was her other question.
Yes, so, thank you. I have a few questions. So thanks for the presentation. It's looking good. I had some requests, some comments, questions. The multi-use court that you're gonna redo, the basketball court. I think it would be a good idea to have some signage there that says this is a court that can be used by the residents. As you know, because we now know it, but in a year or two after opening, nobody knows that, as a resident that you're free to go there and that you. So I think that's something that would be good. I know that some of the plans have a plan schedule on them.
Yeah.
As these documents that we're gonna get, the drawing set are gonna be, sort of a contract between you and us. We need to know how many of each we're gonna plant. And so we need a plant schedule for all the plant materials. Within limits, I think, a lot of it will change, and we don't have all the shrubs, specified. And I don't think, we're gonna be holding you that, well, you said 5 oaks and you now have 4, but you have 1 extra maple. It's like, we won't hold you to that, but we need to have some sort of a document that we can go back later, like, we don't want to have that graphically represented. We need a table for that.
I forgot to mention that will be on the next submission, along with any of the coordination between the civil utilities.
And that was my next question. Indeed, there was the civil had some comments about landscaping in odd places. So that's going to be good. And then also, there was also the civil made a comment that there's a couple of trees that are shown to be saved that are between the building and the multi-use path.
Yeah.
And I think, they were questioning whether they're going to be living, but I think that I heard at one point conservation agents saying that they should really go so that the path can be moved away from the pond. And I think that is that's a twofer. I think you can do, because indeed those trees might not survive construction.
We like to save them, but
I know, but if it's unrealistic with construction on both sides of the trees, they're just, especially when some of the construction is 5 stories high, that's just not, a contractor will make sure that they're not surviving. So we want to be realistic there. And then a lot of the, also, it was also a question I had, a lot of the stuff part of this site is on the Conservation Commission jurisdiction, right? So they are having a lot to say about what's happening within the 100-foot buffer zone. So my question is then as well to you, maybe Kevin, is where are we with conservation?
Our next meeting with conservation is on the 28th of February.
And that's your second, or?
That is the second meeting that we've had with them. We were going to be earlier in February, but because of getting additional materials together that they wanted, they asked to have the meeting moved to the 28th, and we agreed.
Good, and that's going fine. I mean,
yes. So I attended that meeting, and I think
and then
those issues can be addressed.
Okay, and then we're meeting 2 weeks after that again. So then an update on where we stand would be good. Thank you. That really is all I had. Let's go to the public. Pamela Britt, go ahead.
Hi, Pamela Dritt, 13 Concord Green. I applaud you for doing your best to be all electric and ecological. I wondered though, I wanted to know that I would rather have the trees than the path. If you need to narrow the path in order to save the trees at a couple of spots, could you not do that? And because it's 100 years of trees, or anyway, many decades of those trees. Also, I noticed you had a play area or with artificial turf, which is antithetical to the style of building you're doing. It ruins the soil ecology and is dangerous to the people playing and treading on it. And it does terrible things to the water cycle, and it gets hot. Can you please not do artificial turf? Would that be?
Thank you. Let me answer the first one on the trees and the path. It's not just the path, it's just the trees are between the path and the 5-story building. So from both sides, those trees are going to be impeded. And I think once a contractor is out there working, these trees are going to be, they're not going to be surviving a contractor working there. So, and the good thing about taking them out now as well is that then the path can shift away from the pond, which is out of the 25-foot buffer zone that was requested by the conservation agent or national resources agent. So it has a little bit of an, it was requested by them as well.
I just want to make one point as a clarification, and that is the trees will not survive, but it's more because of construction, but also grading between the building and the path. And we have gone on record with the Natural Resources Commission that, in our opinion, the path cannot be shifted 25 feet. And that not making that shift is in compliance with the State Wetlands Protection Act. But if we made that shift, we would take the facilities that are being provided to the west end of the 292 building, where Tom has shown a play area for children and a sun grill area, that would be wiped out by a 25-foot shift. So we're gonna leave the path where it is, at least that's what we've recommended to the Natural Resources Commission. I didn't want to be saying that on the 28th, and then they just said, somebody say, well, you didn't mention it at the last.
Yeah, okay, fair enough, But yeah, I agree with you. And those trees are gonna be hammered, and I'd rather indeed replace them and have healthy trees that are set for years to come.
Right.
So do you want to respond to the
Turf?
The turf.
This isn't the old fashioned, AstroTurf on asphalt. This is a completely different product, and there have been studies, and I don't have the information with me today. I know we've run into the problem with this on the Cape, using it next to the coastal banks. And we did get some, have a company provide some research for us, and I will have to dig that up to see, because there are obviously potential problems with the plastics that they use and things, but
Yeah, PFAS.
there's constant improvements to this turf.
Yeah, okay, and right, I mean, assume that one of the reasons you're using it, that it's lower maintenance, and it's the usage of it is a lot longer, right? You could go out there today and play instead of, and then, so that is the benefit of it. Yeah. Thank you. Now, Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Thank you. Eric Moore, 45 Francis Street in West Concord. I guess my comment is about the height. I think this is a large project. When I think about this scale, it's about half the size of my neighborhood in terms of the number of units. So it's a lot to get my head around. At 5 stories, this would be the tallest building in Concord except for Emerson Hospital. And just looking around, I mean, we've got just a few 4-story buildings. Warner Woods over on Conant Street, and for the most part we're 3 stories, and so I think I'm very challenged by it. I think it's a big step in terms of sort of the design pattern that we have in town, and even looking at surrounding towns. I think, for example, the development in Maynard. I guess I call it Maynard Crossing, where the Market Basket is. Those buildings are 4 stories as well. So I guess I'm curious about the ZBA's perspective on 5 stories as a really exceptional sort of ask for a waiver. I'll frame it that way, but I'd like to know what you think. And I'm curious as well as to whether or not it's a fair discussion to have with the applicant about looking at the project as a 4-story project for both buildings. I think these are massive buildings in the context of Concord, and I recognize the landscaping work around using trees to sort of work with the massing and so on, but they're big, and so I just would like to get a critical assessment of what the ZBA is thinking about the scale, and again what impact it would have to go to 4 stories. Thank you.
Thank you. I would assume that 4 stories would reduce the amount of units, and I would. Would you want to comment on this as the applicant?
I think that the reduction of the building to 4 stories would render the building financially unfeasible, or the project financially unfeasible.
Right.
There's at least one other residential building in Concord, which is Newbury Court, which is 6 stories. So this is lower than Newbury Court. And it makes sense in terms of not consuming more land to achieve the number of units that we're talking about. And we are talking about 201 units, but I believe there's 51 affordable units. And the town probably hasn't had 51 affordable units added to its inventory over the last 10 or 15 years. And this is the type of action that's needed if we're going to achieve those type of affordable units.
This is a good time to talk about. This is a good time to talk about architecture.
Now, since you, let's indeed do that now here as well. So this, just for everybody, there is a working group that has met a couple of times to talk about the architecture, and that's been outside of this, outside of the sort of the public realm. It's been a working group with peer review, our peer review architect and the architect from the applicant, and they've been discussing this. And Elizabeth Akehurst Moore has been representing the board, and Elizabeth Dwyer-Leonard as well. They've met a couple of times, and no architects are here tonight, but I'd like to get your update right now of what's been happening.
Sure. I mean, this responds a lot to your question, Mr. Moore, about how we're approaching this. I can tell you at least how I'm approaching it. And this is what was said, is that this, especially this 292 building, it is massive and it feels massive on the site. And we met with our architect, Cliff Bomer from Davis Square Architects, who agreed that this building needed work. I mean, he's going to be submitting his own memo, so you don't have to take my word for it, right, Elizabeth? He's going to have some sort of written memo.
Eventually, he will have some response, and he will also be at our next meeting, I think, virtually, but he will be there.
And so the height is actually less concerning than the massing, at least to me. And we even said, could you make part of it higher so that some of it's lower, so it doesn't just look like one giant facade? We asked the applicant to go back and look at maybe putting an entrance in the center of that 292 building instead of at the end, so that it's broken up a little bit. Because you're kind of standing there between this, what am I trying to say, that hill and this building. And Cliff, the architect, also thought that that might be a good site improvement to have some sort of access between that side of the, I'm trying to say that side, what am I trying to say? Between the pond and the parking area on either side of 292, would there be a way to get any sort of kind of, way through that, whether that's an archway, whether that's just light, something. I will say, and you guys already know this, the applicant went back and did not do anything to look at that, gave some superficial, the other aspect was just that the building looks pretty commercial and doesn't have very much softness to it. And the applicant went back, did not look at that center, what we had talked about in terms of the center. I hope is going back and looking at it now. There was a lot of reasons why they couldn't do it, because they would have to, because they don't, I mean, I get it. You don't want to change what you have there, but I think it could be a big improvement. So I'm hoping when we next meet, or when you guys meet, the 28th.
We're meeting, the next working session, I will be present as Elizabeth is out of the country.
And again, it's not about, to me, it's not about saying reduce the number of units. It's about kind of make this just feel better as a site plan and in terms of massing. Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Sure. Yeah, everything you said I really agree with. An important thing for me to keep in mind as a board member has been that this is a 40B project, and that because Concord is under a certain level of affordable housing, that we have certain ways we can look at this project, and those are really the only ways. And we can really look closely at architecture. And so we've been, going through and doing that. And I think they've been generous with their time, and I'm excited to see what the difference will be. But I think it's just important to remember that there are only a certain amount of things that we're able to really work with them closely on. And architecture is one of them. And we're definitely doing that.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
He has another comment. I don't know.
Eric, really briefly, thank you for the discussion. I think the ZBA, from what I've read in the guidance, does have purview to challenge the applicant quantitatively, if you conclude that there are design changes you want to make. If the applicant claimed the project would not be viable if you went from 5 stories to 4, you do have purview to ask them to substantiate that through a third party, from my understanding. So thank you.
That is, yep, that's true.
And that's true. But if we go from 5 stories to 4, that's from 4 to 3 residential stories, right? Am I correct on that?
There's 5 stories of residential.
There's 5 stories of residential. So you'd be losing 20% of your units at that point in time. And therefore also 20% of your affordable units. And so, I think that math is easily done to show that makes the projects uneconomical by reducing it by 20%. So, but I hear where you're coming from.
And there are definitely ways to soften.
There's definitely ways to soften. Yeah,
appearance
no, absolutely. We can do that, and we'll keep on pushing on that to make that work. But yeah, and I'm not, and as also said, we don't want to spread out the project, right? We don't want to push it down so that it then get wider, because that's not where we want to go. So yeah, I think the work needs to be done on the architecture and to make more presentable. Is that what word I'm looking for?
Sure.
To soften the architecture a little bit.
And make it work more on the site.
March 11th, hopefully we'll have something to show for you, Mr. Moore. So, let me go to Alyssa Brown.
Hi, Alyssa Brown, 5 Concord Green. I'm also the river ambassador for the Sudbury, Assabet, and Concord Wild and Scenic River Stewardship Council. In this section of the Assabet River is included in the section that is considered recreational, but it is part of the Wild and Scenic. And in that regard, the River Stewardship Council is always concerned with views from the river. So I was concerned about sight lines for these new things from the river in order to try to, minimize newer impacts to the river. We're trying to keep it as much as possible wild and scenic river. So that's one question I had, is that whether sight lines have been done from paddlers on the river. The second one has to do with, I noticed for the first time, the kayak racks were set next to the new multi-use path, I think. And I was trying to figure out how they would get down to the water, whether there would be a launch there, because I assume the bridge goes up, not down towards the river. So is there an associated launch? How would these kayaks be able to access the river? And would that be available to the public? That's my questions.
Thank you. I'm looking at the applicant here who's currently studying the maps.
I was looking for on the site plan, and I don't see the dimension on this particular site plan that I have, but we're hundreds of feet from the river, and we will not be making any alterations within hundreds of feet. There's an existing path to the river. We will not alter that existing path. As tree limbs or other things fall on the path, we may remove them, but we're not proposing to remove any trees, whether they're alive or dead. We are proposing a kayak rack, but there would be no launch or alteration down at the river. During normal water elevations, there's sort of an embankment there, very short from the embankment down to the surface of the water. And people will just they will have small kayaks. They'll take them down there and they'll be able to launch them without us having to make any alterations to the land adjacent to the river.
So is the proposal that they use that spur little path off to the side rather than the multi-use path?
The multi-use path, when it's built, is going to be elevated. So it won't be appropriate to use the elevated path. We have agreed to allow the public to use the multi-purpose trail, the 10-foot wide trail that we will construct from Baker Ave, approximately 1,100 feet out to intersect where the town plans on intersecting what we build and then continuing across the river. The last couple of 100 feet of our path will be elevated above existing grade. The first 900 plus feet of that path will be at grade and paved in accordance with the standards that the town would like to see to complement the work that they're going to do on the path itself, the main path.
Thanks, and I think also it's might be important to note that the current construction is on the existing parking lot, right?
A good portion of the front building, 292, is on paved areas. The entire building at 294, the westerlymost building, is on the existing parking lot.
Right. Okay, thank you. Mr. Bryant, Malcolm Bryant.
Yes, Malcolm Bryant, 175 Conant Street. I just want to loop back to the artificial turf issue. This is something that has come before town meeting several times, and there is currently a moratorium on installing artificial turf in the town while we're looking at research into the impact of the turf on children. There is a lot of research ongoing at this point. And I'd also like to add that we should not be listening too much to the installers and manufacturers of artificial turf. That's a little bit like letting the fox into the hen house. They have a vested interest in telling people that it's perfectly safe, and being far from honest and straightforward in their presentations.
But thank you. Thank you for that comment. Just the moratorium that you just mentioned, that is on municipal property, right? That's not private property.
I think you could be right on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure that that's noted.
But I would add that that is the view of the town. So simply because it's not on private property, it would be good on the developers to pay attention to the general will of the town for that.
Sure. Thank you for that comment. That's landscape, I think. All right. So what's up next? I have some loose ends, some miscellaneous items that I want to bring up. But you had a memo, and I think it just in general, if you can update sort of what has changed since we last met. I don't want to call that a meeting, but yeah.
Okay, my name's Kevin Hurley. I'm a land planner working with the applicant. I live at 25 Lang Street. We sent a memo to the town planner responding to email questions from her. The first thing on that was the town was looking for a cross-sectional plan of the most significant proposed retaining wall on the site, which is east of the building at 292 Baker Ave. And we submitted that cross-section for the town's review. We also have on the adjacent property a plan to build a parking garage. That parking garage application is not part of the 40B application, but we were informing the town as to where that application stood and how we saw the calculations for meeting the parking requirements for the building that's located, the commercial building that's located at 310 Baker Avenue. And we've submitted a conceptual plan of the parking garage itself. And we submitted how that plan would alter existing site features. And then we gave an outline of the type of permitting that would be required for that facility to the board, which would include going back to the Board of Appeals on a non-40B application, where we would ask the Board of Appeals to grant a permit under the floodplain and site plan regulations. We would go back to natural resources. We'd also plan on potentially going to the planning board. Our target date for submission of that material is April 1st. And again, I want to say that's a target date. And if we do submit that by April 1st, we would anticipate that we'd have a hearing with the Board of Appeals on the 9th of May. We then, on an additional comment beyond the parking, not the 9th of May.
We'll chat about that later.
We'll chat about that date later. And, but we can accommodate. And we also indicated, because the chair had asked about it, that we would add a, on the planting sheets, a planting schedule on sheet 1. The other two principal plans have planting schedules on them. Then we reviewed again the parking reductions that we've made. The board was aware of those parking reductions beforehand, but we were asked again about them. And we reduced the parking from the initial submission to the town by 20 parking spaces. We're now proposing 284 parking spaces, and we gave the rationale for having 284 parking spaces. One of the things we ended the memorandum with is something that I'd like to discuss with the board, and then eventually the town planner and us might have to agree upon a date. But in December, we submitted an updated revised set of civil, landscape, and architectural plans. As was mentioned here earlier this evening, we have another architectural subcommittee meeting with the town on the 28th of February. And before all the materials get submitted to the board as a final package, we would like to submit an updated set of civil, landscape, and architectural plans, because there's been minor modifications to a lot of different aspects of what's shown on those plans. Typical would be, there's been a number of sidewalk changes that the consulting engineers have asked us to show. We want to make sure that they're shown on both the civil and the landscape plan. And then the board has asked us to consider a number of architectural changes, and we want to make sure that anything that's agreed to is reflected on the final plans that go before the board. So whether it's tonight or on the 28th or sometime thereafter, we need to discuss when we should submit that final set to make that set the final plans for the application before the board. Not final plans in terms of construction drawings, but final plans upon which the board will make its decision relative to a comprehensive permit.
And that's great. Thank you for that, Mr. Lilly. I mean, I would love to see a set and go through all, because indeed, you know, we have a civil letter indeed that has some recommendation. The traffic letter has some recommendations. There's recommendations all over the place. And you know, I would love to make sure that all of those will make it onto the set. So, you know, I'll be happy to review that.
I think it's when.
The answer to the question is when, yeah.
When
Yeah.
can we pick a date? Right?
So you want a date from us?
She wants a
Well,
date.
we don't necessarily need a date this evening, but if Elizabeth could transmit a date that works for the board. But for instance, on the 28th, we'll still be discussing architectural changes that the board hasn't even seen yet. We'll need to bring those changes back to the March 11th meeting. And then the board might say yes or no, depending upon what's shown and what's not shown. So, and then we need sufficient time for the three civil, LA, and architects to coordinate changes and get a set of plans to you. And I suspect that it could be, that could be done, probably if it works for you, within 2 weeks of the 11th, to bring back and file with the planning office.
That within 2 weeks of the 11th would be a week before our March 21st meeting, where we could potentially.
So all of this, the conversation predicates on the applicant providing an extension to the 180 days, which that expires March 17th. So the board.
That's correct. And we had said previously in my correspondence to you, the applicant had agreed to extend till April 1 for a 2-week extension.
Okay, so that would be, an actual time extension. So you and I, corresponded by an email. But
Right,
that's
so
a time extension that if the board agrees, they have to accept, and they can accept that tonight based on, but I would need an actual time extension form that gets filed with the town clerk. Something a little bit more formal that the board they can accept it tonight. I can send you the form and it can be submitted and I can file with the town clerk tomorrow. But so that would mean that the March 11th, the board has a regular meeting March 28th. I think it is, yes, March 28th, which is a very full agenda right now. I think there's 8 items already on that agenda. It becomes a juggling act. You have the continued public hearing for the Thoreau comprehensive permit, April 4th. I don't think you want to have a conversation on both of these applications at the same night.
No, can we get a longer extension?
We can get a longer extension. I'm sure we can. But, we need to vote on April 11th. That's really when we need to vote. Because you're going to be off the board and I'm going to be on vacation for a few weeks. So, oh, we gotta go. No, but it's like, so we don't want to go too long. So, it is just, the extension is just so that we can get the logistics worked out. I mean, we still have a tremendous amount of work and our work needs to be just a little bit, and also the applicant's work. I don't want to.
And on the 28th, could you, when we filed the application, you met with the understanding you were going to accept the application, have no discussion, which you did, and then we moved into the time frame. On the 28th, could we submit the plans, have the board accept the plans? There'll be a memorandum like there was in December explaining all the changes that have been made on the plans and no discussion about the plans. And then you can determine whether they comply with what we said we were going to submit, which we would tell you on the 11th.
Well, they'd have to have a discussion on the 28th then, whether they felt the plans were acceptable and can close the public hearing and move forward on April 11th with a decision. So there's going to be some discussion. There has to be.
Right. But even if we find stuff on the plans, it's not going to be much, but we can, still condition it. If there's like, well, we missed that stop sign on that driveway, that's gonna be a condition, it's simple enough.
If I may, standard practice, and Judy may want to weigh in, but typically when a board issues a comprehensive permit, it's based on a set of approved plans. And then there's generally a condition there that says that final plans, be submitted to the board's representative to ensure that all of the conditions are put in there. So it's not that the set of plans that is an updated set of plans that when you requested the approved plan, it doesn't mean that there aren't catch-up conditions that then go into like basically, you're basically your construction level at that point that you play the catch up with it. And those are submitted and subject to administrative review by the ZBA or its designated agent for consistency with the comp permit. It's not a new review, it's just for consistency.
So I think some of the items that the board has discussed, these past few meetings, are items that the board has been asking for in the final plans, which you're correct, and Judy can weigh in. But it's either on the plans and those plans get referenced in the decision, or the board has to come up with a condition. So if we can not have to have a condition saying the plans need to be updated to show this, that is always my preference. So
It is, but there's always going to be something that comes out.
There's always going to be something,
That's what I
but
just want to point out.
there were a lot of things discussed tonight that, everybody was in agreement that the plans were going to be revised to show this stuff. So I'd rather, I'd rather try and have what's close to final be referenced in the decision, not just, for, the board trying to craft conditions to address remaining issues, but it just makes the next step in the process so much easier from a town perspective, working with the applicant moving forward.
And the fewer conditions you have to write into the permit, the better, related to the plans.
Yeah, okay, good. But I think it almost sounds like we're on the same page here, right? That there's going to be a final set of plans and there's going to be eventually a review when the construction drawings come out, whether everything goes in.
And so it will just come down to a busy meeting on the 28th.
Yeah.
March.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can handle that.
So
that meeting, by the way, since we're scheduling that meeting, 28th, that's a regular scheduled meeting. So would that be a Zoom meeting, or should we can do that as a Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah.
Right. We don't have to do that in person. Good.
Sounds good to me.
Good.
So if the applicant has offered to grant a time extension to April 1st for the 180 days,
That's we'll provide that.
I would ask that the board make a motion and second to accept that time extension, and we will file with the town clerk tomorrow.
I move to accept the time extension to April 1st.
And I second.
And all those in favor, Mrs. Bea?
Aye.
Ms. Akers Moore?
Aye.
And chair votes aye as well. So accepted. Thank you. Thank you for that. Was that your things? No, also since the last meeting, as we mentioned, we already had some items that were discussed: architecture, peer review. We've gotten you mentioned Concom. We've gotten some materials in from other people. One of them being, and I hope people here read it, is the Regional Housing Services, Liz Rust, sent something in, and something in it that I missed. She mentioned parking in her memo, and how is parking going to be handled between the structured parking, the surface parking, affordable units, market rate units? Is parking going to be assigned? Is it going to be first come, first serve? How's that going to work? Do you know?
I don't think we've looked at that. Certainly the podium parking will be assigned. That's the parking within the building. Outside, none of the parking would be assigned.
And would affordable units get assigned spaces as well, or the affordable units will park outside?
I believe the affordable units would park outside.
Okay, not sure what I think about that, but I'm looking at actually, Judy, you're smiling there. Do you have any experience with this?
I've seen some boards push back on requiring all the affordable units to park outside. You know, there's an equity issue here. I think it really is a question of how important is it to the board, given that there's a lot of other issues with the project that you are going to want to discuss with the applicant. But I share your concern about that policy.
Yeah, thank you.
It's an equity issue.
Yeah, very much so.
If I may clarify.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the interior parking, if it's to be paid, if one wants to pay for it, then they can pay for it. So it's not that they're prohibited.
Oh, okay, so so assigned parking means in this case that
I believe that for the apartment units.
that so there is so you pay your
to have interior covered parking.
okay, so you pay more rent for an interior space and outside is free, if you will.
Or if it's I'm not certain logistically from the management perspective, it's an extra fee or whatnot, but I believe that. So it wouldn't be any resident, whether they have an affordable unit or a market rate, has the ability, I believe, to pay the extra cost to have covered parking.
Okay, so any parking or covered parking and rent is decoupled.
I believe that's the way it would be. That's correct.
Right, okay. Well, for me, makes it a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right, so that if you, I mean, as long as it's decoupled, I think, then that makes me feel a bit better.
You want to talk about the local preference? So we just.
That's coming up, So indeed, we need to, thank you. We talked about that. We asked the first meeting, and the applicant agreed that they would be willing to have up to 70% local preference. And then you mentioned that, well, I was in a town that they didn't do any because they went at there, and I think it got me thinking a little bit. So thank you for that comment. So we need to think about what we do for local preference. It's there is some thought around this as well, that it shouldn't be up to a regulatory board to set policy, because it really is a bit of a policy question. But that being said, I mean, it needs to be somewhere, and and that's also why I mentioned earlier.
We are setting policy on this whole thing in terms of how much affordable. I don't know that.
No, we're not.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I've.
Okay.
I was gonna ask if has been any guidance kind of written about this that we could look at.
There is not that I've necessarily seen, but I was indeed mentioning, it's at March 11th as a date for input. So if anybody from the public wants to opine, or any of the other groups in town want to opine, please feel
I'm not
free.
enough to. No, I'm just asking for information.
Yeah, and I
maybe Elizabeth has something.
Elizabeth had something to say. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Just the local preference is only for the initial leasing. That local preference is, anybody who meets those income, qualifications, anybody who may have a rental voucher. And if they move forward, and Judy can chime in as well, but if they go through the whole leasing program, and there isn't anybody that can fill that under the local preference, correct me, Judy, if I'm wrong, they get to move on. It's not like those units will forever stay vacant until there's a local preference.
So there's the mere design of local preference. Sometimes people don't understand how that all happens. When you're putting together the lottery for the affordable units, the lottery agent has to look at the demographic makeup of the local preference pool. And if there are not enough minority applicants in that local preference pool to equal out the percentage of minorities in the larger metro area, then the lottery agent has to pull from the so-called general pool, which is everybody, enough minority applicants to establish, parity with the regional demographic makeup. So you may, in fact, have people in the local preference pool who are not local in order to achieve racial parity. So just understand that. And I think that, the other thing to kind of know too is that this happens to be a subject we've done a lot of work on. And, quite often what happens is that the people who actually get the units may be more local than the lottery order might have suggested. So, I would just say if you're going to go down this path, you may want to certainly require the applicant, whoever's doing the lottery, for the applicant to give you not only what the makeup was of the lottery, but also who actually got the units. Because I think that's the only real way you can assess the effectiveness of a local preference policy. And you certainly can get that data. Other communities do. But, I think that in terms of the getting permission to do local preference, that really is on the town. It's not the applicant's responsibility. You have to kind of create a defense for why you need the local preference. I've been in this field long enough to remember when that was just done. People could just get local preference, and it's not like that now at all. So you'll have, as a town, have to put together an analysis showing why you need that local preference for whatever percentage of the affordable units you want to have so designated. And it's up to the subsidizing agency, not the town, whether that gets approved.
That's helpful.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, it's a burden on the town if we have a local preference at all, right? Because the town needs to justify that. So if we stay silent on it and just don't mention anything, then what happens? Then it's just a bit of first come, first served. It's all open, yeah.
It's a lottery. Everyone gets a number, and the numbers are pulled based on order, and you're offered a unit or offered the opportunity to pursue a unit based on your order in the lottery.
Yeah.
Without regard to where you live.
Yeah. No, we have, I'm sure there is, we have people in Concord that, would want to be getting one of these affordable units.
Right.
So I feel kind of like, well, we need to give them some help as a town. We need to give them some help. But I'm not sure whether we are up to 70%. And
also, it doesn't sound as straightforward as you want to help the people in town, so you say it's open to local preference. It may not still be open to. It sounds a little more not as straightforward as, oh, great, yeah, let's offer it to a bunch of people who are already here and work in town, and they get it. So
no, they get a percentage of it, right? I mean, it and I think if I heard Judy correctly, there's a certain, it's the makeup of the state that wants to be reflected in the units here.
It's the metropolitan area.
Or the metropolitan area. So that doesn't.
Yeah, the area within which.
Right. So we could still get. Sorry, we could still get. At least some local preference in there, and then the rest of the non-local preference could then balance out the makeup of the state or the metropolitan area. So.
Metro area.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think more, I personally need to do more.
So, yeah, that's good. I think glad that you brought this up. I wanted to bring that up because it is something we need to think about as a board, and we need to come to a conclusion on eventually. So it's something to think about.
Right.
No, hang on. We have somebody with a hand up. It's a call-in user, so I can't mention your name, but
this is Linda Escobedo.
Yeah, go ahead. Name and
Thank you. I wanted to. Yeah, Linda Escobedo. I'm on the Concord Select Board and also on the Concord Affordable Housing Trust. And I just wanted to comment on the local preference. I think that housing groups in general feel strongly about the including local preference, and they have been able to justify the 70%. And as someone already commented, that's for the first round of leasing, and it does not hold up substantially the process. And Liz Russ from our Regional Housing Service Office would be able to speak to this in more detail.
Yeah, but thank you. We got some correspondence from her, and that is, I mean, and in her letter also, I think she mentioned that she would put together that application for the town.
Yes.
But that's. Thanks for calling in, but it would be nice for us to, and I don't want to add to your workload because as a person on the board, I know you have plenty of other stuff to do, but we would like, I mean, if you could get us some documentation from the Board of Selectmen of what you wanted to do, then that would be some guidance for us, so that we can condition that.
Okay.
I'm not gonna keep this meeting going forever, but I think 8 of her letter is important as well, the impact on town social work staff.
Bring it up.
So this is from Liz Russ, so you're mentioning.
Yeah.
Considering the impact of town social work staff, including funding for local community chest sort of vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Just knowing what the town staff has been put under with some other housing that's in town, I think that it's not unreasonable to talk about this. I don't have a strong, just to bring it up for discussion.
So let me, people who don't have this letter in front of them, which I don't think it's a letter, it's on the website. For large rental projects, consider the impact to town social work staff, including funding the local community chest sort of vehicle, UCargo. If there is an opportunity for this kind of mitigation, note that approximately 20% of units will be rented to extremely low-income persons with Section 8 vouchers, based on actual development in the Regional Housing Services Office area. So that's.
The TV's gonna turn off.
Is the TV gonna? Who's that? Sorry. That's a different mouse. No. Sorry, viewers. We have a TV here that wants to shut off. We want to try to avoid that.
Yay.
Thank you. Yay.
So it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question of how much of it should be on the project. But it's a reality.
It's a reality. So that's a question for the applicant. You want to add something that we need to discuss, or?
I think we do need to discuss it when we're talking about mitigation in general. I know we're also talking about traffic mitigation. So what's what's the balance there?
Yeah. I actually want to leave it at that.
Sure.
And it's like, that might be a topic of discussion, for the applicant to come back to, because I think they offered some mitigation on Route 2, up that they don't have to do, and we just want to make sure that, that mitigation goes somewhere. And I still feel very strongly that, that the traffic mitigation at Baker and Main is very important to the town, and that is actually very important to the neighbors. And I think that's I don't feel as strongly about a Route 2 mitigation. I don't want to be too parochial here, but for the abutters, we heard a lot of people from Concord Green speak here. They're very worried about the traffic. And so I would like to alleviate their concerns to the maximum extent possible. And Concord Green, all the residents of Concord Green aren't really helped by traffic mitigation at Route 2 and Baker Street extension. And that's a reason why I'm just pointing to Baker and Main, because that's for the residents of Concord. That's, I think, where this project could be the most helpful.
Who, if I can ask Elizabeth this, who in town would kind of could be able to quantify a little bit the impact on town services such as social work services for?
Not sure.
Yeah, the town social worker.
And I'm not sure if there is a way to quantify that.
Sorry, Judy was,
go ahead, Judy.
This is just creating some fair housing concerns for me. You got to be a little careful about suggesting mitigation based on who's going to live in the units.
Okay, I'm not suggesting it. The regional housing service office is suggesting it. So it seems interesting that you say that. And they're the ones who.
Yeah, I understand. As your 40B advisor, I'm just suggesting that you should be very careful.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just assuming that they know more than we do, but.
Judy, can you give us any guardrails as far as fair housing? Whether that's state stuff, just whatever, where you see that boundary as being.
Well, the board can't regulate or impose conditions on the permit that would have an impact on who can choose to live in the development. You're regulating a development, public health, public safety, environmental impact, building and site design, that's sort of the box. But as for who gets to live in the units and the impact potentially of that population on the town, that is not in the board's jurisdiction. I just would suggest that conditions that get to that are probably something you should avoid.
Interesting. I'll follow up with Elizabeth first.
Yeah, let's follow up on that one.
I will.
There is, Linda, I think is that do you have another question, or do you just still have your hand up? Good. That answered the question. Thank you. I have one more item, and that's I went through the waiver list. It's an older waiver list, but just because I could, and the thing that's still out there, and that I think everybody's been dancing around a little bit, is the sewer improvement fees, and the waiver that's requested from that. And anybody can correct me on this, but I am of the opinion that we can't waive that fee. It's not a town fee that's just a fee that we set for an application that you pay a fee. It's not sort of, if we waive that fee, it's not income that the town is going to be missing out on. Since it's an enterprise fund, it's somebody's going to need to pay that fee. If you guys don't do it, I doubt the town will step up and say like, okay, we're gonna do it, because somebody needs to pay that, and we need to find a mechanism to get that fee paid. And I know there's a mechanism out there, but I think that's outside of the outside of the board, I don't think we can ask somebody else to pay it. I think that needs to come from you. So
We're making efforts on that.
I really appreciate that. Thank you. That said, that was all I had. Is anybody else have anything for? No?
No.
Well, you guys are all set?
So you need to formally move to continue the public hearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I move that we continue this hearing to March 11th
At 7 p.m.
at 7 p.m.
And here.
Yes.
Here and hybrid.
In person and hybrid guys going to be.
I second that motion. You can all say aye together, right?
We can all say aye together. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, yes,
So
yes,
fun being
yes.
in person.
No, yeah, it's so fun. It was a productive meeting. We still have.
Oh,
We
yeah.
do we need to vote to adjourn? We need to
No,
vote.
not a vote. You just need to adjourn.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for being here. I think it was a